Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Meet the Breeder. Today we have Dawn Birr from Fairland Farm in Napanee, Indiana. Welcome.
Hi, it is nice to join you.
Looks like it's pretty nice weather down there. We're having a pretty gorgeous day now that it stopped raining.
Well, yeah, I just decided I better sneak inside because I felt sprinkles. So, it's northern Indiana. We would expect nothing less.
So my first introduction to your herd was at Nationals, and I was very impressed with your beautiful animals. How many Nationals have you participated in? Quite a few?
We started going in 2013. That was up in Minneapolis, St. Paul up there. And then we have been every year except for when it's been extreme Northwest. We haven't gone that far.
Is showing the primary focus for you in your herd, or do you like to milk test, or what are you all doing with your herd?
Well, I love the showing. That's my favorite part. Milk test, I've done one-day milk tests at some of the shows, but now that I'm working full-time at the high school, milk test is kind of crazy for me because I have to be in at work at 7:15. So to try and get everything lined up, and I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna have to wait a couple of years. I know what my goats milk, and I'm happy with that. And I've gone after some really high producing genetics in my bucks. So yeah, I mean, yes, it would be nice to have the SG in front of some of my does, but at this point, it's just not happening.
So when you first started with Nigerians, did you know you wanted to get into the showing, or did it kind of start as more of a hobby?
Well, I was looking for something to breed for my girls that they could show in 4-H. So in the fall of 2003, I started looking, and I thought I was looking for Angora goats. I wanted something different. I didn't want just the ordinary. And I stumbled across the Nigerians when you'd like Google search or whatever.
Sure.
And there were two breeders up in Michigan that were up close to Lansing. And I emailed both of them and told them what I was interested in. And the one emailed me back like 2 sentences. And the other breeder emailed me back this huge long email that was really informative or whatever. So I made contact with her. That was Dina Sansone that had Capio Acres at the time. And I ended up the spring of 2004, I got my first 2 does. So that started it all.
So you started it kind of as more of a 4-H project for your kids, more so than your own. Okay.
Yes.
Are your children still involved, or have you kind of taken over the herd?
It was my herd from the get-go. They were kind of along for the ride. So it very fast became my show herd. So they benefited getting awards because of the genetics that I had, because I really didn't buy too many does. I did initially, I bought a few, but I went out and bought the best bucks that I could find and worked on my lines from there. So that was the key for me, because what is the sweetest thing in the world is winning with the goats with your herd name. So everybody said when the girls were done with 4-H, so are you selling all the goats? And I said, absolutely not. Those are mine. So
when you were starting to assemble your herd, did you have a certain size of a herd in mind, or did you have a certain bloodline you were working with, or did things just kind of grow and change and evolve as you got more into it?
Well, obviously when I started, I was green as all get out. I had no idea what I was doing. And thankfully I got hooked up with Dina, And she was a fabulous mentor, and man, did she have an eye for a nice looking goat. And so I kind of rode her coattails for a number of years. She mentored me. She told me what was good and what was bad. And you're loving your goats too much and feeding them too much. They're too fat, and, you know, a lot of things. So I didn't really know what I was looking for, but as my herd evolved, I started getting really picky about certain things. And so I guess it just kind of morphed, but I was very, very fortunate to get some really nice does to begin with to start my herd.
As your breeding program progressed over the years, what things do you feel have been the hardest to breed into your program, and what things do you feel like have been the easiest to bring in?
The hardest to bring in is long flat level rumps, which in turn are going to, you know, help with your mammary. So it would be, and then foreudder attachments, smooth extended foreudder. The easiest thing for me was the solid feet and legs, and that is one thing I'm really super nitpicky about. I don't have bad feet and legs in the herd because I've gotten rid of anything along the way that had it. So, but the feet and legs were solid pretty much from the beginning. So that's been easier for me. So I've been able to bring in bucks that maybe might be a little bit posty in the rear leg, but my lines are so strong with feet and legs that I've been able to use them to improve, front end assembly, rump structure, udder attachments, and that kind of thing.
After breeding for this many years, do you still need to bring animals in to upgrade certain things or to try things or to blend in new genetics?
Oh, yeah. I brought in, let's see, how old is Matrix? The one benefit of going to nationals is seeing some phenomenal animals out there. And in 2014, down in Louisville, I saw Susan Osman had a doe named Atwood Acres Dot. And I fell in love with her mammary, and I just happened to be standing there beside the ring, and we were talking, and she said, she could ding her some stuff on the front end assembly, but the mammary was probably one of the most beautiful mammaries I've ever seen on a Nigerian. And so right then I'm like, okay, I want a buck kid out of her. So a couple of years later, I contacted her and was getting a reservation on a buck kid out of Dot. And she ended up losing Dot that year, like a week before kidding, I think it was. Devastating blow to her herd. But a few days later, her daughter, Undermine, kidded with a buck and a doe. And she posted on Facebook that because of this phenomenal yearling that had just freshened out of Dot, she was going to go ahead and sell the buck. And I immediately messaged her and I said, I want the buck. I don't care what he looks like. I want the buck. So I bought him sight unseen, and a week later got pictures of him, and he looked like a little giraffe. He was just covered with moon spots, and I was mortified. And I thought, oh my gosh, people are going to think I bought him because he's covered with moon spots. But that buck has improved so many things, mammary attachments, rump structure. He's just a phenomenal buck. And so bringing him in has helped a lot. I brought in a Phoenix farm buck out of Summerbird for a while. And I have some does that aren't too bad out of him, but there were just some things about him that I wasn't quite keen on. And so I moved him along. So it's basically been bucks that I've brought in. I've brought in a phenomenal doe from Little Tots Estates a few years ago. I named her Azure Sky, solid black with blue eyes, just a phenomenal doe. And I lost her last year to bad kidding. So that was a blow for me. So I don't normally bring in does. I brought in a new doe this winter. Her sire was the 2019 national champion. The dam was the national grand champion, the Castle Rock herd. So I just took a stab in the dark, but normally I don't buy new animals. I don't bring them in. So I play with a little bit of new genetics once in a while.
Do you do anything with AI or anything like that, or is it all live breeding?
All live breeding. At this point, I have about a 3/4 of an acre pasture for my bucks. And so they have got plenty of room. So I co-own with Jackie Beaucamp up in Michigan, a buck out of Fairly Elise. Phenomenal, one of the breed leaders in production. So I've got that buck. So I've kept 2 years ago, I kept 3 phenomenal bucks out of my best does. So I use those pretty heavy this year.
Do you work with a limited amount of dam lines, or do you just kind of pick and choose whoever you're liking to keep and stick around?
I always want to make sure that my buck pasture has some of my best genetics in the herd. If I have a buck that's getting a little bit older, I'm going to keep like my Sweet Garden buck that I got, Frederick. I kept a buck out of him 2 years ago, just because I wanted to make sure if something happened to him, I've got a backup. I've got him. So there are a few of my lines that I stick with pretty heavy. See, what would have been 8 years ago, I brought in a Little Tots Estate buck named Acer, and he probably has done the most for my herd than any. Some of my best does are out of him. He really improved some front end assemblies, some feet and legs, some mammary attachments. So I've got quite a bit of his line, but like I said, I've got quite a bit of my dot matrix buck genetics now. So I keep dabbling. Sometimes, you've got 2 great goats and you cross them and you go, yeah, no, that didn't work. Not doing that again.
Do you feel like you're more of a line breeder, or do you do more outcrossing, or is it just whatever that goat needs?
Now I was doing a lot of outcross, well, probably more outcross. I'm trying some tighter line breedings this time. My doe, Polyphemus, was bred back to her grandson, I guess it would be, but I crossed my Azure buck with her, and those 2 lines have worked really, really well together. So we just decided we would try it and see what happened, because you never know. So I normally don't cross that close. Usually it's a couple generations out before I'll cross back, because I don't want to get junk or whatever. So yeah, my lines are getting close enough now. That's why I've kind of been watching for a new buck. Just haven't really seen what I want yet.
Okay. So how many shows would you say you try to average when it's a non-COVID life in a year?
In a year, 8 or 9, probably. We start out early part of May. There's 2 or 3 in May, a couple in June. And then after the 1st of June, I usually sit home and wait for nationals. Just to let the does rest and make sure there's nothing picked up at a show or whatever. And then it hits pretty heavy after nationals again. There's quite a few end of July into August, and then a few in September. And then we hang on and keep some in milk and take young stock down to nail in Louisville the beginning of November. And that's the last one of the year.
Now, I'm not sure exactly how large of a herd you keep, but I personally keep a really small herd. So my herd is my show string.
Okay.
When you keep I'm assuming a larger herd than 9 does. I don't know exactly how big your herd is, but if you keep a larger herd and have the luxury of picking animals from different age groups or breedings or bloodlines or whatever it may be, can you talk through your thought process a little bit on how you assemble your show string, or does it kind of depend on the show or who's looking good? Or
sometimes it depends on the show. A lot of times you look at the judges, and if you get to know the judges well enough, you know what they like. I can assemble it that way. My young stock, I try and do some assessing at home. And I used to be able to put like 2 in a class, but with the youngs, it depends on if I've got anybody going along with me to help show. that
Okay.
helps a lot. But I don't have, obviously, you know, if I want to take a permanent champion and to do a champion challenge, you know, I just kind of pick and choose there what I want to take. But I don't have a whole lot per age group. I try to only keep 3 or 4 in an age group. And then as a doe would get finished or whatever, and then you move another one up and so on. But I don't know. Sometimes it's like, you know what? I want to see that doe clip. Let's clip her up and take her to the shows on a whim, you know? So,
Sure. So you don't have a set at the beginning of the season. I'm going to have 2 dry yearlings, 2 2-year-old milkers, just kind of
yeah,
good for
yeah.
that.
Cause like my dry yearlings will change. Like I've got, what do I have? 5 that'll be dry yearlings. So there's like 2 I can think of off the top of my head that probably won't hit the show ring this year, because I just want to see what they look like when they freshen. They're not bad conformationally, but they're not the best. So if I'm going to take a dry yearling to a show, and then if she gets a leg, they sit at home. Because if one of my juniors win a leg, I don't take them back out unless it's a payback show. Just because
I don't either.
I want to
Once
give
they're
somebody
done,
else a chance to get a dry leg, or another one of my goats to get a dry leg. So yeah, once they get a dry leg, they stay home. So yeah.
So being in Indiana, I'm assuming you're mostly spring kidders, or do you kid for fall too?
No, I spring kid. I start the beginning of February. I like to be done by the beginning or middle of May, but then you have the stupid does that decide to cycle back and not settle. And so you have the beginning of June kids. I hate that.
Yeah,
Basically because it hits during show season. I would like to have by the end of July, when it hits, you know, time for nationals, I like to have my kids all weaned. And, you know, if there's does that I'm not going to be showing, they're going to be dried up by the time we go to nationals. So I don't have to leave any here at home. But I like to have, usually by Thanksgiving, all my does are dry. So December and January are my months to, you know, do whatever. I mean, it's Christmas, a lot of get-togethers, so I'm not out in the barn having to milk and that type of thing. So January is my month to try and get stuff done in the house if I have a decorating project or whatever. And then the kidding starts.
I keep the exact same schedule. You know, I have a young family. As much as I love the goats, that dry period is what keeps me ticking. Like I need to if we want to do a family vacation or whatever. You know, especially in the colder climate. I'm in Wisconsin. I don't have a heated barn. My milk machine freezes up on me. It just is a pain. So I find that that's worked for me. You know, I'd love to milk 305, but it's not happening.
Yeah.
December, January, and the beginning of February, I'm on like goat shutdown. But
yes,
you know, everybody has different things. Some people can do the grind year round. I cannot. I have got to.
Yeah. No, I like to be able to, like on Christmas Day, I can go out and feed extra in the morning and not have to leave the family get together to run home and do chores. So it's just nice to have that extra, you know, time to spend with family and that type of thing. My website is fairlandfarm.com. And I'm pretty picky about keeping it up to date. So that when somebody contacts me about sales or what have you, I can direct them to the website and it's up to date. I have 7 due this week, and I think there's about 15 yet to go, maybe something like that. My best stuff is starting to kid now. So usually the stuff that I'm not planning on showing necessarily of my Nigerians, they start kidding in February and March or whatever. And then what I consider my show string, some of them start mid to later March, but most of them kid in May. Then they're a little bit fresher, especially if they're going to be milking in through Thanksgiving. My La Manchas that I have, I like to have them starting the beginning of February, but they held out on me this year. So I have several La Manchas that haven't freshened yet. Last year, I sold off a bunch of the does again because I said if I'm going to be picky with the Nigerians, I need to be picky with La Manchas. So, yeah, I probably have 10 La Manchas maybe. So I don't ask me how many goats I have either because I don't know. No. I think I was around 60 before kidding started. I test annually. When we do our pregnancy tests, I send in blood work and get our testing done on that. So that's just a comfort to know that, you know, you're negative across the board. And what I normally do with my goats is I leave the kids with the mom for the first week or two, and then I pull and I bottle feed from there. That's some advice that I would have for somebody that's going and looking for a new buck and is looking for production is look for somebody that is milking twice a day and find out what their milk test results are. Or, you know, if you see them in a show or whatever, ask, you know, do you dam raise? Do you milk twice a day? I think it's going to make a big difference in your capacity that you're going to have.
You're buying from a breeder that's going to manage, you know, the same way you're planning on managing them. You have a lot better chance of finding success in the area you want to be successful in. And I think those types of questions, a lot of new breeders don't even really know to ask. Things like, do you pull your kids? You know, are you milking twice a day? Do you keep a clean herd? Do you show? Do you prioritize, you know, milking over showing? But those are the things where if you're trying to place the right goats in the right homes, those are the questions that I think people need to be asking to make sure that everyone's satisfied. And I find with my new buyers being on the breeder side, if they're not asking me those questions, I'm asking them those questions.
My good friend up in Michigan, Jackie Bocamp, that has Caprine Acres, we talk a lot, you know, about, you know, different things that are going on, especially with the Nigerian dwarf. She has full-size goats also, but things that are going on in the world of the Nigerian dwarf and getting them to the point where these are a dairy goat. You know, I realize a lot of people have them as pets and as pet milkers, and that is completely fine, and they're great for that. But you know, if the Nigerian breeders want to be, you know, taken seriously in the dairy goat world, we have to prove the worth of these goats as a milk goat. So it's important because most full-size breeders don't dam raise their kids. And so I guess, you know, I grew up on a dairy farm. So my philosophy is always bottle feed. And you milk twice a day. That's what you do.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And I look forward to seeing your beautiful animals. I'm assuming you're going to Kentucky if all things go well, right?
Great. Well, thank you so much. It was good to talk with you.
Yeah, good to talk with you too. Once again, learned a lot. It was wonderful to speak with you. Have a great day.